motherfucker. Like, you don't think the person down the street's going to say the same shit? Well, I care about you. Oh, and the other coaches don't give a fuck about you. Right. Like, that's a great, unique selling proposition. The problem is in coaching, there is no USP, right? There is nothing unique that you can do in the process. And so everybody's like, well, how am I different? And the truth is, as a coach, you're not that different. And so you're always going to have a small handful of people that choose you based on proximity, based on referral. And that's cool, except you can't grow a massive coaching business purely based on proximity and referral. Like, it's just not going to work that way. So what you have to start defining in your offer is you have to understand the wins that you actually create for somebody. And, you know, I made this mistake early on when I was doing business stuff, is everyone's like, well, how do I fix my business? And I'm like, let's just have a conversation. I'll tell you everything that's broken. And I really hadn't even created self-identification that there's really 4 major things that I look at in the business. And when instead of having these transactionally based conversations around like fix your leads or whatever, I was like, dude, there's only 4 things we need to look at. What is your source of leads? What's your source of nurture? What's your offer in your sales? And what's your LTV? Everyone's like, oh, like it became really simple. And so I encourage all coaches, have a system, have a very clearly defined system. By the way, as a coach, it's going to make your life a million times easier. Because when you get on a consult with somebody, if you look at an email, you should quickly know which part of your system somebody's fucking up in, right? It shouldn't be, oh, they had a cheat night on Thursday night and that's what threw everything off. Okay, well, maybe that's the consistency part of your program. But you know, most coaches out there, they probably put everybody through a few very distinct phases. I think, you know, my good friend Mike Milner that owns Pop, right? He puts people through 3 very specific phases, which the first is metabolic priming. And effectively that's like reverse dieting, right? Like, I'm getting you back to maintenance. Every person that goes to him has probably tried 8 to 10 different diets, right? And they're like, clearly they're probably some level of metabolic adaptation. They probably need to restore homeostasis. They need to get back to maintenance to have the ability to burn fat at a reasonable rate or to achieve some level of result, right? So he starts with like metabolic priming. Then I think he goes into some sort of like fat loss activation. I forget what he calls it, but it's something there where this is the actual diet. This is where we're going to create results. And then the final component is like, hey, I'm not going to get you results and just leave you hanging. You want to keep those results, right? So he calls it lifestyle optimization. So the big difference is if somebody goes to him and they're like, well, you know, why are you different than someone else? He's like, listen, at the end of the day, you're going to get a diet, right? You're going to get a workout plan. You're going to get communication. Has anyone ever said differently? No. Well, has that worked for you? No. Great. That's because what you've done in the past is only communication, only training, only diet, and it wasn't predicated on achieving these 3 things. Have you ever optimized your metabolism? I'm like, no. What the fuck does that mean? Great. That's probably why you've been failing, because you've never optimized your metabolism. So let's prime your metabolism for fat loss. As soon as you say that, now they're bought in, right? Great. Do you think that if your metabolism was primed for fat loss, that you would be more successful with a diet? They're like, yeah, probably. Great. That's when we're going to move into the fat loss activation. Now, do you want to achieve fat loss and then gain it all back? Because I know you've done that a couple of times and you know, you're here. You're like, no, I want to keep it off. Great. Have you ever learned how to do that? No. Oh, well, we have that in our program too. And so over the course of 6 months, we're going to teach you those 3 things. Well, that becomes a super compelling offer, right? And really at the end of the day, offer is just a perception of value. People are not making an investment based on something that they think they're going to get an inordinately low return on value, right? Or return on investment. If they're investing $3,000 into a 6-month program, they think they're getting 5, 7, 10K in return. Now you have to start stacking that value. So you have to stack that value in wins. You have to stack that value in results, but you also need to think about things like guarantees. One of the best offers I've seen in our space is my friend Joe Harris that owns a keto lifestyle diet, right? He basically takes people, he starts them in keto, takes very overweight clients, improves insulin sensitivity, does things like that, and ultimately transitions them to a balanced lifestyle where they can have carbohydrates. Genius approach, right? And it's a year-long program. He's like, if you don't achieve your goal in a year and you've done everything I've asked you to, I'll keep working with you completely for free until you hit your goal.
Yeah, that's a great offer.
That's an amazing offer because it removes all barrier of risk, and he's literally putting it on the other person where he's like,
he's fully committed too.
Yeah, and anybody that buys in, his level of attrition is so ridiculously low, and it's because anybody that buys in, they know the only way they fail is if they fuck up, not the diet. That's why he's had success.
You just said that so much more eloquently than I've probably ever presented to my trainers. I used to tell my trainers whenever they would walk a deal or they couldn't scale their business or sell any personal training, that it always comes down to 2 things: value and price.
Yeah.
Either your price is way too high for the amount of value you're providing, or you're not giving enough value for the price that you're asking.
Can I add one thing to that?
Yeah, go for it.
And I think value and price are a function of certainty. I think that people will only not invest in you, quote unquote, based on price. And I think price is completely bullshit, based on their lack of certainty as to what that price will be relative to the value that they perceive it to be. Right.
Yep.
And I think if you can create more certainty, a la guarantees, a la creating wins, having very defined processes that they've never heard about, I think that's where you can start to bring the level of certainty up, which brings their barrier of investment down.
Oh, yeah. And a big problem, too, is when you're a coach or trainer and you don't have confidence in yourself, you don't see the value in even the price that you're presenting. Like, I've had trainers actually tell me, I wouldn't buy training for $3,000. It's like, well, why?
Right.
You obviously don't lack confidence in yourself. The way I used to present it, Adam, because I'd had the same exact conversation about price and value, and sometimes they get these looks like, well, no, because it's too much money. It's okay. Well, take the most expensive package of training that you can sell, which would probably be, I don't know, a couple $1,000s. Could I sell you a house here in San Jose for that price? I bet you I would have a line out the door with 10,000 people willing to buy that, because it's worth it, right?
Right.
There's perceived value already there.
If it's worth it, then they will pay it. So your job is to make it worth it and bring them that value. The price means nothing at that point.
Well, dude, what kind of cars do you like? What's a car that you
asked
that
me.
you would
Yeah,
like? All right, which one of you loves cars? Adam's a car.
Adam's
What do you
car.
like? What's a car you like?
I love the Range Rover Sport.
Okay, Range Rover Sport, right? Like $130,000 truck, right? Is 30 grand in your world, like, it's a good amount of money, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a lot of money. Like, if I asked you for 30 grand today, you're probably not just giving it to me. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
If I said today, dude, on the street, 130 grand Range Rover Sport, are you buying it, like, today, like, outside?
For 130 grand?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. 30 grand for a Range Rover Sport outside, are you buying it today?
Yeah, no brainer.
Okay, you just told me 30 grand's a lot of money.
Right.
Right. It's a function of certainty and value.
Right.
I took something that you really like, something that you're confident in the value in, that is perceived to be something super high, and I just gave it to you at a number that you just told me is a shitload of money.
Yeah.
So 30 grand for people is a lot of money, except I gave you something insanely valuable and something that you're certain in will deliver on that amount of money.
Right.
But people are already perceiving, oh my God, 5,000 is a lot of money. For who?
Right.
You don't know the fucking situation. Dude, I had somebody come in to NCI 6 months ago, sold his car to pay for NCI. And this goes back to the whole results thing. 5 years ago, I probably wouldn't have taken the client. But I'm so confident in what we do that I was like, I know that I'm your last resort. If you're willing to sell your car to come to me, I know I can make you a lot of money.
I used to share stories with my trainers about clients that would pull out home equity lines to buy personal training from it. It's like, if you build enough value. I mean, this is how we started here, right? When we got into the space, we knew there was an opportunity with selling online programs. We knew there was a ton of crap there and an opportunity to sell that. The average price when we did our research was between $27 and $57 is the average digital online program. We had a program ready to sell before the very first episode was recorded, Maps Anabolic. We did not release that for over a year. Yeah. And what we did for that year was build this tremendous value in ourselves. And then guess what we got to do when we released that program? Sell it for 5 times the normal market value. And it sold like gangbusters.
But you also knew it was an amazing product.
Well, yeah.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. So let me ask you about this guy that sold his car. How's he doing?
He made $10,000 in his 3rd month with us.
Right. There you go. And so here's the other part of this. And I'll bring it back to fitness, right? You have a client in front of you that you're trying to sell coaching for $1,000, $2,000, whatever the price is. If they knew that for that investment, they would get fit, healthy, lose weight, and it would stay off forever, and have a good relationship with food and exercise that worked, they would spend way more money than that amount. All of a sudden, that $1,000 or $2,000 of coaching, they'd spend $200,000 if they knew that would happen. The difference is they're not sure that that's going to happen. I'm going to hire you, but I'm not sure in you, and I'm not sure in myself.
And that goes back to certainty.
Right.
Right. So in a sales conversation, you're creating certainty. But at the same token, I would argue 90% of coaches that are on the sales side of the conversation, they're not certain.
That's right.
And that's a fucking problem.
Yes.
Like, if you're a coach, listen, like I said, taking on a $5,000 payment from this guy, he sold his car to get $5,000 to pay me, was 5 years ago, that would have been so scary. Except I know definitively, if you come to my program and you do exactly what I said to do, you're going to make well beyond 10,000. I mean, the number of 6 and 7 figure earners we've churned out in the last year is absurd, and I would put it against anybody in the industry.
Now, when you're coaching these trainers up, is this one of the first major hurdles right here? Is
Offer creation?
Yeah.
1,000,000%. Because everyone's got a shit offer and everyone's got a commodity offer. I mean, here's the reality. We could talk about